I'm not a killer. I'm just someone who wanted to make things right. Can't I just let myself forget what you've told me? Can't I just let myself forget what you've made me do? You think I just want another puzzle to solve? Another John G to look for? You're John G. So you could be my John G. Will I lie to myself to be happy? In your case, Gabe, yes I will. I have to believe in a world outside my own mind. I have to believe that my actions still have meaning even if I can't remember them. I have to believe that when my eyes are closed, the world's still there. Do I believe the world's still there? Is it still out there? Yeah. We all need podcasts to remind ourselves who we are. I'm no different.
Amen.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
You can't handle the truth. King Kong ain't got shit on me. I am the third revelation.
I am so much crazier than you.
I am the one who knocks.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Listening, big boy, huh? That's bright. Fuck you.
Everybody on? Good. Great. Grand. Wonderful.
Welcome to Facing Off, a podcast where we try to remember the two movies that we watched so that we can compare, contrast, and rate them. I don't know my name, but I can tell you the license plate numbers of all 6 cars outside. I can tell you that my podcast co-host is right-handed, and the guest sitting across from me weighs 215 pounds and knows how to handle himself. I know the best place to look for a gun is the cab of the gray truck outside, and at this altitude, I can run flat out for half a mile before my hands start shaking. Now, why would I know that, and how could I know that and not know my own name? I butchered the end of that, but what's up? I'm Gabe. I'm one of the hosts. This is my co-host, Nick.
You got so into it.
I know, and then I lost it. Nick, we got a special guest on this episode, a huge Jason Bourne fan who's probably just like seething with anger right now that I messed that up. Andrew Berg, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? Really excited to be on the podcast for the first time. It's taken a while, but we're finally here.
Yeah, well, Berg is, we're going to refer to him as Berg, but he's one of my big movie buddies. We're always talking about different movies and stuff, especially Christopher Nolan movies, now that I think about it. But yeah, he's been excited to come on. You want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Berg?
Yeah, a little bit about myself. Gabe already alluded to it, but went to high school with Gabe. Mm-hmm. Me and him are two of the brave souls that traveled down to L.A. and
now we're locked here forever.
So I'm living on the beach, being a beach bum with a former guest, Nick, the other Nick.
Yeah, Nick Doria. Yeah.
From, what was that, Dawn of Justice?
Yeah, we did Batman vs. Superman and Captain America Civil War. Yeah, that was back. And then he was our live audience member for our MacGruber versus Austin Powers episode.
He's our first repeat offender, technically.
Yeah, but you now work for Arnold Schwarzenegger's company, right? And LeBron.
Yeah, I sling supplements for LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So,
he's just passing them out to he's like, hey, you guys want some protein?
It's a noble conquest, and, just trying to make sure that we're supporting them in any way we can.
Yeah, potential promotional sponsors of this podcast.
We're eventually going to get an ad read in here. Yeah. A promo code. I'm working on it as we speak.
Nice.
I'm pumped for it. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Do you have any shout outs that you want to give out?
Ooh, shout outs.
Any special people in your life?
I'll have to think about specific people, but for now, just shouting out social distancing.
Oh yeah,
we're doing this podcast virtual.
Yeah, we're doing this. This is the first episode that we're doing remotely. Nick is in the safety of his home due to a little scary fever he had on Monday.
I don't know what I had. Right? Yeah. No, I'm fine. I haven't had a fever in 48 hours.
Wow.
I just no big deal. I'm not trying to flex or anything.
Wow, you're pretty strong. You're a healthy, strong boy.
But I have no idea what I had, and I don't want to give it to anybody else. So I'll see everybody in a week and a half. Until
Well,
then,
Hey, thanks for protecting the universe, Nick. You're a good person.
You're
And everyone
welcome,
out
man.
there, hey, I know it's tough right now, but just do your part and don't hurt other people.
It is literally the least you could do.
It is. I don't have any shout outs. I think that's a great shout out that you gave.
The people of Venice Beach need to adhere to social distancing.
I know.
There's
I
still,
mean,
crowds on the boardwalk. Which
I
is kind of
know.
insane.
Like, why are the homeless people still out there? That's a horrible joke. Cut it out. Cut
Jeez,
it.
dude.
Anyways, we are doing 2 movies that we are going to spoil. So if you haven't seen Memento or Bourne Identity, I suggest that you do so. And if you haven't seen them and you're listening to this, you're dumb. And if you haven't seen them or it just in general, you're dumb because they're great movies. So
What if you forgot to see them?
that's
Or
true.
forgot that you've seen them?
You saw that would be. I want what both of the protagonists of those movies have, but just for movies, just so I could just rewatch, or like Breaking Bad, just for Breaking Bad, so I can rewatch it.
Yeah, I think if you don't know who Jason Bourne is at this point, you're just
Yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ,
there's-
it's Jason
you're missing
Bourne.
out on a huge part of society.
Yeah, I mean it's a heavily memed name. All right, Nick, why don't you
True.
hit us with the synopsis of these 2 movies?
Okay, our 2 movies today involve forgetfulness. They are Memento and The Bourne Identity. Memento is the story of Lenny, a man with no short-term memory, who sets out to avenge the murder of his wife, but can't seem to remember how close he's gotten. Luckily, he has a friends. He has a friends.
He has friends.
He has a friends like Teddy and Natalie, who, just kidding, those 2 are the worst friends for Lenny. And
Yeah.
once Lenny learns that he's actually killed his wife's killer already, and Teddy has been using him to kill random drug dealers that Lenny thinks are his wife's killer, Lenny kills Teddy. But none of that's in order. That's pretty much the plot, right?
Yeah. No,
Just not in order.
complaints here.
The Bourne Identity is the story of Jason Bourne, a man with no identity who learns his identity is the identity of a man with several identities, one of which is Jason Bourne. He's a trained assassin, and he wakes up after being fished out of the sea with 2 bullets in his back, and with the help of German love interest Marie, he follows his own trail back to Paris and then the US, where he finds out he's been part of a top-secret assassin training program called Treadstone. He's been brainwashed not to remember his own identity. So once he figures it out, he submits a letter of recognition and then reunites recognition. Letter of, what is that called? Quitting? When you quit something?
Yeah, resignation.
Resignation. I'm an idiot. It's okay.
Did you
I
say
have
recognition?
yeah, I did twice. So that's where I'm at. And he reunites with Marie at the end in Mykonos. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah,
That city in Greece. Mykonos?
Yeah,
Mykonos.
sure. Nick Alexanders, are you listening to this pod? You're the only one who would know that.
If you know Greek, how do you
Yeah.
pronounce Mykonos?
He
Is
lives
it
pretty close
Mykonos?
by, but I would never know because I'm not allowed to leave this building ever again.
It's kind of a fun word to say.
Yeah, good synopses. They're not that similar movies. These are probably like we're stretching a lot with these, but they are both about protagonists who don't remember who they are.
Yeah,
but
they're both about-
kind of
yeah.
have a mission regardless. You know,
Forgetful badasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a unique face-off because, like, while they both do have like memory issues, they're both like trying to find themselves for different purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
True.
they're set in 2 totally different genres. Like, one's a true psychological thriller, and the other one's like pretty much a straight action thriller, which is, you know, definitely a little unique in terms of facing it off. But I think that'll lend to some good comparisons.
Oh, yeah, and we had to have Berg on this because he's like the biggest Jason Bourne fan I know, probably.
Yeah, I suggested these 2 movies in particular because I am a huge Jason Bourne fan. I love the original trilogy. And then Memento is like...
You don't like Bourne Legacy?
I actually do like Bourne
It's
Legacy.
awesome. I love that movie.
Jason Bourne, not so much.
Yeah.
I hated that they called it that, but
I know.
we'll get to that later. But
Hey, but he finally knows his name, so they have to use his full name.
Memento is like one of the first movies that got me like really into like film watching back in
totally.
college. I watched that the day before I watched Prestige, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, who is this Christopher Nolan guy? Because like I like movies now because of them.
I'm probably going to repeat this exact same point later. Let's start breaking down these two movies. So we use a typical rating scale for this podcast. It's 1 to 7, 1 being lowest, 4 being middleest, and 7 being greatest or highest. Basically, 7 is great in a category, 4 is average, and 1 is a piece of shit. We are going to do our 5 typical categories today, but
Yes.
the ordering, Nick, will be spectacularity,
Got it.
originality,
Got it.
acting,
Yes.
eye candy,
Okay.
and legacy. So, Berg,
Boom.
I just fucked that up when I explained that to you. I apologize, but let's kick it off with spectacularity, and let's do Memento first. Nick, and you started off, and explain what spectacularity is.
Spectacularity is the engagement level of the movie. Were you glued to the movie the whole time? Did you want to look away? Are there lulls in it, or is it just action-packed or mystery-packed in the case of Memento? And in the case of Memento, it is mystery-packed. It's a little bit less fun of a movie than the Bourne Identity, so I gave it one lower score. I gave Memento a 6.
Oh, whoa. Bourne Identity is
let's
going to get
go.
a 7?
In spectacularity, yes.
Yeah, cool. All right.
I think if you look away from Memento, you're tempted to look away, but if you do look away, you're always going to be missing something. The whole thing is full because it's the way that the story is told is so disjointed, which I love. If you look away like I did the first time I saw this, you miss something. So there's always something to miss, so it has to have that really high score, but I don't think it's perfect because like there are times where I think you're kind of tempted to look away.
Totally.
And then the end, though, the last like 20, 25 minutes of it are like gold.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Berg? I actually wrote that same exact note.
It's funny because I literally have a line in my notes that says if you like skip a beat or miss a scene, you could potentially ruin the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate that about both Memento and the Bourne Identity, that it's like they just kind of throw you right into the middle of it pretty early on, and you're just, not so much in the case of Bourne Identity, but in the case of Memento, you're just playing catch up and
Right.
trying to basically find out what's going on along with the character who's trying to figure out like who he is and what's going on. So I also gave Memento a 6.
Okay.
I think the
Ooh.
only, yeah, we'll have to see what I give for Bourne, but
These 7s all the way through, we know.
yeah, I think it really does have the potential to be a 7, but I think there were just a few scenes, and I think they're more so in the second act where it just kind of feels like it lost a little bit of its momentum. I think especially some of the scenes with Natalie, when you're still trying to figure out like her motives and what she's doing, and I just feel like they drag a tad.
Whoa,
And
not a
also
big
just-
Carrie-Anne Moss fan.
Also,
dude.
just because I'm hesitant to hand out a 7 off the bat, but yeah, I think a 6 is a good starting for Memento.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm not going to surprise anyone. I also gave it a 6 out of 7.
Ooh,
I
number
do
of the
think-
beast.
The thing is, like, I think the reverse order of the movie, that creativeness, it keeps you engaged. It's really interesting because you know how it will end, but you want to know, like, what the story is about and why it's going that way. And each scene is essentially a clue for the next scene.
Yeah.
Which is pretty brilliant. I also really like how it intersperses with those black and white scenes.
Yeah.
I think that keeps you, because if it was just all going backwards, I think that would be problematic. You would just like, at some point, like your brain just wouldn't understand that. But they're keeping you, like they're doing some scenes as like essentially like interludes that are explaining what's happening in the plot. And he's basically explaining it over the phone. I especially like the score in those scenes. It's really cool. It's like very subtle, and it keeps me in there.
Oh, in the black and white scenes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
totally. I
yeah, I don't
put that
know how
note
to-
down too.
Yeah. I mean, I think out of all of Christopher Nolan's movies, it's not as intense and engaging, especially his movies afterwards. But I do, and it's almost hurt by starting at the end. You know, like maybe that kind of brings you out of it a little bit. But you'd be crazy not to be like more engaged than the average movie when you're watching something like Memento. And you're right, Nick. Like for me, the last 20 minutes is just like you're glued to it because you're like, what is real and what isn't? And that's why Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan are so smart. But let's talk about Bourne Identity. I'm going to call it Bourne Identity. I don't like that it's actually called The Bourne Identity. Not a big fan of that article in front of it, but let's talk about spectacularity with that. Berg, why don't you start?
So, surprisingly, I did not give The Bourne Identity a 7 here.
Whoa!
I also matched it with Memento and gave it a 6.
Okay.
Similar to Memento, though, I think this movie just kind of like starts out hot and pretty much stays on that same trajectory for most of the movie. Like, I didn't realize it until I watched it again last night, but it's like within 10 minutes, you're already kind of getting a feel for who he is.
Yeah.
Like, they pick him up out of the water, and like 5 minutes later, he's like sleeping on a bench in Switzerland and like has that scene where you're like, oh, this guy's legit. Like,
Yeah, when you're watching it again, you're like, oh, I forgot how that just like comes out of nowhere. If you didn't see a trailer to the movie, you'd be like, what the fuck? This guy's a ninja.
and like, I don't
He
know.
just whoops that dude.
I don't know the book and how like the book starts the story, but like there
forgot this is based
could
on the
have
book.
been like a version of this movie where they try to provide a little more backstory to it, kind of like what they did with the Bourne Legacy and Jeremy
Yeah.
Renner's character.
Right.
And I almost like how they don't really tell you a lot about him, and they just like kind of let you figure out who he is along the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, 6 is a really solid score. The one reason I didn't give it a 7 is there are a few scenes towards the end where they rely a little bit on exposition, and he almost has to explain a little too much to Maria, which is like totally understandable. But like upon rewatch, I could kind of tell where like the writer decided like, hey, I have to like have him kind of explain a few things,
Right.
because she's not on the same level as him in terms of understanding what's going on. So
Right. I put a note in that what keeps this movie engaging, it's kind of like Sicario, where you as the audience are learning at the same time as the protagonist.
Yeah.
But you're maybe a step ahead in this case because you at least know who, the Treadstone people, like what's happening with them. So he doesn't really know what's happening there, but he has to figure it out. So you kind of get that. But I think that's a good way of like keeping you interested in the movie. I mean, I originally gave it a 5, but I think I'm going to give it a 6 because of a lot of the things you
interesting.
said. I think the mystery amnesia aspect is super engaging. I think the score is honestly really cool, except for I will say whatever is in the soundtrack when they're in the car chase is like one of the worst songs I've ever heard.
Oh, you took
it's like and then
Ready
he's like,
Steady Go by
it's
Paul
like,
Oakenfold. That's like
is that and it's like break
that's
yourself.
like a classic. Like I feel like that's got to be like a European like rave song.
Oh,
or
it
something.
definitely is,
Yeah.
but I just like it dates this movie so much in that scene. I will say that this is one of those first movies that we saw where the fighting is really realistic.
Oh, it's
And-
so good.
But I'm going to get into like why that it still is kind of hurt by the way that they portray fighting in the eye candy section. But I did want to say like the first moment where he beats the guys up out of nowhere in the park is cool. I mean, visually it's kind of dumb, but it's awesome that he just like beats the shit out of them and it looks like he actually like really knows hand-to-hand combat. The ambush in the apartment is awesome. And if I'm talking about engagement level, I vividly remember being in the theater and like having a heart attack when the person like bursts through the window. Yeah. That's like one of the OG jump scares to me. And it's not even a horror movie. The only thing that kind of sucks about the fighting that when I'm rewatching it is that I don't know if you guys noticed, but it has a bunch of the like fighting noises in it. It's like
Yeah, it's got some
And he's like,
accentuated kick
He's
and
like-
punches. For
yeah,
sure.
and it's like whoop-ah, boom. It's like super dumb, but it's still awesome. And I think the character development is so cool. It's like it's a really well written story to keep you engaged in that way.
Yeah.
It's just so early 2000s that I'm not going to give it a 7 because I'm kind of pulled out because of that. What about you,
Oh.
Nick? You gave it a 7, so
I really like early 2000s movies. Maybe that's the difference. I think that the combination of the character development and the like the number of just like sheer badass scenes in this movie, like for what it is. What was that?
Sorry.
For what it is, I think it's a 7. I think that like in its genre, it stands out for me, and like I wasn't looking away from it, even though I watched it on Sunday when, in retrospect, I was getting sick, so I didn't feel very good.
The rest of this podcast is just going to be us opening cans.
Yeah, the rest of the
while you're talking.
it's just being quiet, and then
No, I agree with you. I didn't even mention the last shootout scene is awesome. Like,
it's so good. And then there's the restaurant analysis scene that
he
you
rides
butchered.
that dude. He rides that
Are you
dude
talking about the
to
one in
the
the
ground.
stairwell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has like he's shooting with his pinky.
Yeah,
on one
you
guy.
just took them all from
It's
me,
not-
dude.
That's not possible.
The pinky shoot scene.
We'll get to
is
that
incredible.
one in Eye Candy, but like for its time, that was unreal.
Oh,
in
that
hindsight,
was
like some of the
crazy.
like CGI was a little, but
Yeah, it still looked pretty realistic in
at
that
its
scene.
time, it was like that was awesome.
Dude. It was.
Yeah, dude.
it was
He falls
really-
on top of that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
it definitely
an
does.
upper tier level takeout maneuver.
Yeah. You ready to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Hold on. Before we move on, we have to talk about how good of a Moby song that is at the end.
Oh yeah, that is a great song.
That
I also
song
love Moby.
like
dude.
transcends
Yeah.
this movie and this trilogy. It's
Do you remember
so
when
good.
Eminem said, like, Moby, you could get stoned by Obi or something? And then he's like, nobody listens to techno. Well, like, that aged poorly because everyone
It did.
listens to techno now. But they don't listen to, like, Moby techno.
Like no Bourne movie is complete if that song doesn't play at the very end
I
after
agree.
some ominous saying or something like
Yeah, it's like they ride off into the
Yeah,
sunset
it's
or
like
something.
that-
They show up in Mykonos.
that. That
and-
song completes every movie and
Yeah.
like gets you excited to go into the theater the next time around.
That is a good point, that it keeps you engaged even afterwards.
I think that's huge for movies too. Like you have to send people out of the theaters on like a high note.
I agree. And
Movies,
or on an insane. That's what we talked about in our episode about The Prestige. We were like, oh, like Christopher Nolan is so smart because he puts something at the very end that makes you want to watch everything
Yeah.
from him after.
It's so crucial.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you could have a semi average to bad movie, but if you send people out on the right note, it'll change their opinion of the entire thing.
Yeah.
Like one quick example, Fast 7 with the Paul Walker send off.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really like that movie, but I liked the Wiz Khalifa song at the end. And I left
Okay.
the theater going like, that was an awesome movie.
Hey, Wiz Khalifa's pretty tight. All right, so that was
Taylor Gang.
What was that? That was 6s from Berg and I, and then a 7 from Nick. Let's move on to our second category. Oh Jesus, Jesus Christ! It's Jason Bourne. Originality. Originality is where we talk about the creativity of the movie and whether it needed to be made. And sort of things like that. Does it stand out in its genre? So I'll get it started with Bourne Identity. I gave it a 5. I could probably be convinced to go higher. I don't quite know how original it is. It is interesting that it was based off of a book, but I do think that we never really had the confused and mysterious like lead agent character. That was definitely a spin on like the James Bond and Mission Impossible stuff we had seen. I think it is more creative than those other ones, especially with like John Wick movies now are like creative in terms of the fighting and the mysticism. But I think this is kind of its own type of story that has lived on and like people have tried to, replicate it. I think it's a really well-structured story, but I was thinking about it. The plot is like, this is very specific, so bear with me. The plot is almost like Pineapple Express, where the bad guys in Pineapple Express think that Dale is some like crazy guy that's like out to destroy their entire like business and everything. They're like, who's this Dale Denton guy? And they're like really pissed about him, and they think he's like some badass that kills everyone. And then in Bourne Identity, it's the same thing where it's like Treadstone thinks Bourne is like on a revenge thing, but he's just literally walking around trying to figure out who the hell he is. He's not doing it. They're like,
just
what is
trying
he
to
up
figure out his
to?
life.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, they're sending like every operative they can to kill him. But
Yeah, I don't know. I just like I made that connection, but it doesn't take away from how like creative the movie is. So I do think it's above average in terms of that. I just like I don't know how much it stands out in the genre. I don't know. I could be convinced. What about you, Berg?
yeah, so I actually gave it a 5 as well, which felt low for me, but I think it just comes back to like spy movies have been done so many times that it's hard for me to like realistically say any spy movie is original now.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the spy genre, this has to be at the top.
Definitely.
I mean, if you think about like what we typically associate with spy movies, like Bond, Mission Impossible, it's like this movie's about a guy who's got like no gadgets.
Yeah.
He doesn't have like a supermodel girl. He's a pretty average looking dude, and like
Hey,
he's
Franca
able to
is
do
pretty hot.
stuff with like just basically his bare hands and everyday objects like pens and
Hey,
towels and magazines.
let me tell you about
Like that
a little
magazine
movie
scene in the
called
next one?
Die Hard, okay? But you're talking about only spy movies, so I agree with that.
So like the originality for like the spy genre is definitely there, and like if you just think about some of the scenes, like how many chase scenes do you see now that like involve a jagged like Mini Cooper? It's like that doesn't happen.
The Italian Job. There are plenty
Those
of
are
Mini
like-
Coopers.
There are several Mini
Right?
Coopers.
There
Yeah,
are
but-
literally 50 Mini Coopers.
But those aren't Mini
No,
Coopers
I
where
know.
the tires are feeling splashy on the way.
That's
over.
true. That's true. That is very
true.
true.
But so yeah, I think spy genre. If we were just doing spy movies, it'd be probably closer to a 7. But if we're just doing overall originality, I'm giving it a 5.
Okay, that's fair. What about you, Nick?
I also gave it a 5
Whoa, oh my God.
Nice.
People are going to hate us.
because we just agree.
They ain't us.
So I was reading a little bit about the differences between the book and the movie, and they're like pretty big differences. So
Okay.
I think the movie is like a very loose adaptation of the book.
That's cool. I like that.
So it gets some originality points there. I think that it's really like a lot of. I'm trying to think of what that trope is, like the trained assassin who's like a sleeper cell.
Yeah.
That's what he is. He's a sleeper agent, and that
They're like lone agents or whatever out there, right?
no,
that
but
can
he
be,
also
like,
doesn't like
turned
you can
on
like
at any moment,
you can like
yeah.
turn them on. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Oh,
the
yeah, you can.
this is the all you gotta do is all you gotta do is ride them down a stairwell to their
Oh,
death.
yeah.
And this is like the pinnacle of the like sleeper cell like subgenre of spy movies.
Totally.
Like it's like totally a
I'm surprised
thing
that it's not
that's
like a
imitated.
Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's better than Jack Ryan. I've been watching that show, and
It's fine. Jack Ryan is like, some of All Fears Jack Ryan was cool, but like, I don't know.
I don't know. I was gonna throw it up in the Rex. I was thinking about throwing that one up in the Rex because I've been watching the last 2 episodes the last couple days, and I'm
It
like,
is a good recommendation. Some people might like it. It's pretty
I'll
popular.
save it. It's fine. I don't know.
I didn't.
But yeah.
I didn't mention, but I do think like the twist at the end with Chris Cooper when he gets capped, like that is genuinely a good twist because it
That
leads,
is a good twist.
It turns it into a series because you know that Treadstone is like going to do whatever it takes to protect their secrets.
And it goes right from that scene to the like director meet or board meeting where they introduce Blackbriar.
Right.
So it's like it's a perfect handoff.
Yeah.
And like upon rewatch, you could tell that they were like they gave you a lot of hints that they were
They
going
were
to
gonna
kill
do
Chris
that?
Cooper.
Yeah.
But when you watch it the first time, you're thinking the whole time that guy is just like the next guy to go after Jason Bourne.
I've seen this movie like 6 times. I always forget
Because
that
they
that's
like
gonna
they like
happen.
sync up the call that he gets with the call that Julia Stiles' character gets.
Yeah.
When he tells her to like close down the Paris house. And
Right.
So it's like they build it up actually really well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. It lends right into the next movie, which is another reason why I love the originality of this because like it plays so well into the trilogy that
Yeah,
like they
definitely.
all act as like one continuing story, which is definitely original for the spy genre.
And it's
Yeah.
Like an
original
anthology.
and it's creative for like the movie that starts it all off, and I think that they handled that really well. All right, let's move on to Memento for originality. I'll get it started. I gave Memento a 7 out of 7. I think it's one of the most creative movies ever. The only other movie that does this that I know of is called Irreversible by Gaspar Noé, and it's like it starts with a rape and it goes backwards. And so, yeah, sure. If you want to go watch that, you could do that. It's pretty brutal to watch, but I just think it's really creative. Even though you know the end, they still like keep you interested in it, and I think that goes into how clever Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan are as writers. And even when you rewatch, and you still don't know what really happened and what's fake. You don't really know if Lenny actually did kill his wife, like if he is actually the Sammy Jenkins. You don't know if that's true or not, even though it's like all signs lead to it being true. But like I when I first watched it, or the first like few times I watched it, I remember being like, oh no, it's obvious in the end that he killed his wife. Like that guy lays it out for you. And then I had a big argument with Marty about it, because Marty, I guess our buddy Marty from back home, ran into Christopher Nolan and asked him about Memento. Or at least he said he did.
No chance.
Yeah, Marty, you gotta clarify this. But he asked about it, and I was like, "Why would you ask that? Isn't that's like the most clear of all of his?" And then I rewatched, and now I really actually don't positively know. And so I think it's creative in that way. And it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, so that's pretty damn original. And I actually didn't know it was nominated for 2 Oscars until today. So,
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah.
Jonathan Nolan wrote it as a short story, though, first.
Yeah.
Like, he pitched it, and then he wrote a short
Jonathan
story.
Nolan is a brilliant man, and as much as your fiance Julie is going to say that the Russo brothers may be able to compete with the Nolan brothers, they can't. Anyways, that's a 7 for me. What about, let's go with you, Nick.
I gave it a 6.
Okay.
I think it's really original, but like, I don't know. I don't know that it's like a brilliant idea. I think that it's done, like the disjointed storytelling thing is done a lot of times, and this just is one that, like, I gave some of the points you're giving it here in another category.
Oh, interesting. That's fine.
Like for a different reason. Why I think there's something about this movie that sticks in people's minds.
Yeah.
And like,
legacy. So
yeah, and like sticks in it, like sticks in culture. And I don't know that that's because it's original. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't give it a 7 as opposed to, but I gave it the points in another category, I think.
Okay. What about you, Berg?
I'll keep this one short and sweet. This was like the first one I penciled in before even rewatching it. It was a straight 7.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I didn't even want to let my rewatch affect the score, because the first time I saw this movie, I was like, mind completely blown.
Yeah.
And like, even upon rewatch, I was still like, wow, like, think about having to write that script and like what that would take for your mind to like overcome what you're writing.
Well, see, because it could almost be like you write the script and then you just reverse the script. But that's what I was saying about like the black and white scenes kind of complicate that, because there's a through line the whole time. And then you're going back and forth with memory, which has nothing to do with the delinear aspect of the thing.
Yeah, this is like masterful non-linear storytelling, because he's telling the story backwards but playing the scenes out obviously like chronologically, so like the words aren't going in reverse, like everything's happening forward, but then at the same time that it's going backward, then he's playing the forward linear black and white scenes,
right?
And they like all like come together in that one color scene in the very end, which is awesome.
You know what's cool is that they also include like the end of each scene, and so some scenes, some like moments or quotes are repeated, like Natalie, right? Who the fuck is Dodd? Or whatever. Like, you hear that twice. And I think that's smart, because they're imprinting it in your brain, and then you see the next scene and you're like, oh, that's why he's saying that.
Yeah. Another point for originality for me was like, how many movies do we get where like we have a narrator that is completely unreliable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you go through the entire movie, like, wanting to believe this guy, and then, like, at every turn, you're like, wait, how believable is he actually?
Right, and then you get his last speech at the end, and you're like, oh, he just manipulated
you're
this
like,
whole
he's
thing.
actually insane. But this
Yeah.
whole time, I was kind of pulling for him, so now I feel a little weird.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that. All right, anyways, well, we can move on to the next category. Our next category will be, what are we doing, acting?
Acting.
Acting is a category where we just talk about like the performances, and it's all encompassing. So how good was the acting, and then did the directors and writers give the actors the tools that they needed to perform at the best of their abilities? Let's stick with Memento since we're on it. For me, this is like a little bit lower. I have it at a 4. I could be kind of convinced to change that, but I think it's pretty average. I think Guy Pearce is a pretty good actually, he could be a fantastic actor. Like David Michôd movies, like the Animal Kingdom and The Rover, he's really good in. He's great in L.A. Confidential and Count of Monte Cristo. But I don't think this is his like best performance. I think he nails the specific thing, but something about him bothers me, and maybe it's supposed to be that way because he's not a very likable character. But it's like, I also don't like his narrator voice that much. And I know I normally don't care about that, but Hugh Jackman and Christopher or Christian Bale had like perfect narrator voices in The Prestige. And now I'm like kind of focused on that. But I thought Carrie-Anne Moss was like super good in this movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I think she's even better than she is as Trinity in The Matrix, even though she's great in that. I love when she comes in and is messing with him, and she's like, "Jesus Christ, Lenny, he's the one who did this to my face," or whatever. Like, and it's like, I don't know, it's like a really like layered performance. It's not all one thing. Also, I love Joe Pantoliano.
He's great in this.
In the Rewatchables, the Ringers podcast, they have a Joey Pants Award for that guy because he's like one of those people that no one knows his name, but they're always like, "Oh, that guy."
I only recognize him as Teddy.
I recognize him
Like
as
Joe
Teddy
doesn't fit
or
in.
Cypher in
Cypher's
The Matrix. Wow, it's interesting they're both in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just made a
Lenny. I never thought about that through line. I don't know. Everyone else is kind of good or serviceable. I think the guy in the motel from Batman Begins is like pretty good.
That's where he's from.
Yeah,
Like
Oh,
knew
yeah.
he's in a
that
lot
guy
of
was-
Christopher Nolan movies, I
Yeah.
think. I don't know. The guy who plays Sammy Jenkins is pretty great, and I always like that actor. I love the scenes where he's getting tested and he flips off Thomas Lennon and he's like, "Test this, you fucking quack."
Have you seen that guy in Mississippi Burning?
No, yeah, I did. Well, I mean, I haven't seen Mississippi Burning since high school.
Yeah, it's an
but,
old one.
Yeah.
That was where I recognized him from.
Yeah, what about you? What did you give Memento acting?
This one was tough for me because it was hard for me to strip out like what was acting and what was just like the script, because I do think like this script is, amazing.
Yeah.
So it was really hard for me to say
But
if
that's
like
part of it.
yeah. I gave it a 5.
Okay.
And I think the only reason I didn't like lean towards a 6 or a 7 was because I just truly feel like you could plop a few more actors into Guy Pearce's shoes and you could probably get a very similar kind of movie and very similar story. Not that I have anything against Guy Pearce. I actually wrote in my notes, I kind of got like a Tyler Durden vibe from him,
Definitely.
which is a compliment.
Yeah.
like a more subdued Tyler Durden.
Like he plays uneasy and like unnerved so well throughout this entire
That's
movie.
a great point. Yeah.
And so like I think he nailed it through and through, but again, like the script is just so strong that I'm hesitant to like put it all on one actor. And you guys are right with Carrie-Anne Moss. I think she's good in this as well. I think a few of the scenes with her were a little drawn out, but
Yeah.
the way they introduce her with like a bruise and a cut lip already there is a very like it kind of like makes you attracted to the character because you feel for her a little bit before knowing like the full backstory.
Right.
And so like I remember rewatching it and being like, wow, that's a really neat way to introduce a character because you
Definitely.
instantly like kind of feel for her.
But then
you can see
slowly,
how like he has, and they've already introduced like the photo that says like she will help you.
Yeah.
Right.
She's lost someone, so you see her bruised, and you're like, oh, I totally get it now.
Yeah.
And then you realize that it was all a lie.
Yeah.
This movie is the master of Chekhov's like facial cuts.
Yeah, facial cuts. Yeah.
I think the first time you see Guy Pearce, he's got like 2 cuts on his face. It's like everyone's just slashed across the face.
Well, that's the thing. They I mean, I didn't even think about it with the cuts and stuff, but they do lay out all of these things for these characters.
Yeah,
and they
there's a
kind of
ton
manipulate
of.
you in that
There's
way.
there's like a million Chekhov's guns in this. There's
Yeah.
all these like things where you're like, well, why is that there? And then you learn later.
Yeah. What did
I
you
don't-
give acting, Nick?
I gave it a 6. So I think that the reason why
That's high.
why you don't like Guy Pearce's voice in this is because I think what he's trying to do is like juxtapose the way that he talks with the way that he looks.
Yeah.
Because if you just looked at the way that he looks, and maybe if he like spoke like he was Tyler Durden, you'd be like, well, this guy's nuts. Which you
that's
find out
actually a pretty
at
good
the
point I
end,
didn't
he
think
is
about.
nuts. So he has to have like the way that he talks has to be this like really calm, like that kind of deep, almost monotone way that he speaks, because you have to at least a little bit, for the sake of the story, believe that he actually is who he thinks he is. This guy who used to be like an insurance, whatever he was before.
Yeah, I mean he definitely, once they tell you that he was this insurance investigator, like that's when you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this guy is like a piece of shit, and he's actually playing that role right, as opposed to like you see a guy with tattoos and like bleached blonde hair, and you're like, oh, this guy just looks like a criminal. He looks like Ryan Gosling in The Place Beyond the Pines.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
But like a more polished version.
And dude,
I guess.
Carrie-Anne Moss, the scene where she like goads him into hitting her and then walks outside and sits in her car and waits for him to forget so she can come back in, and you find all of that out, all in that scene is that scene blows my mind every time, the way that she just like, she goes from like 0 to 60 in terms of how
and then
good she is in that performance.
Right.
To like in a blink, like you just go from like, oh, she's pretty good in this, to like, oh my god, she is so good in this.
The 2 times before that you've been introduced to her was in the diner, and then when she has him over to sleep in her bed.
Right.
And so you still think she's like a friendly character up until that point.
Yeah, it's such a real, and then you get everything where she's a piece of shit afterwards. Yeah, I'm moving it back. I'm moving it up to a 5.
I think
that's a good. You guys gave me good arguments.
One
for
other thing that I noticed that kind of like prevented me from scoring it a little bit higher was I just never really felt the connection between Guy Pearce and his wife. And that's because they didn't really give you many scenes, if any, between those two.
You don't really get the wife like talking that much.
Yeah, but I never saw those two, and I don't know if it's because like we really do just see so little of her, but I just never really saw like a connection between those two, or felt something that would make me like understand a little bit more of his motivation.
Totally. All right, well, what about, you could start this off. What about acting for Bourne Identity?
I gave Bourne a 5 as well.
Okay.
Kind of feels to me like I'm scoring Bourne low, but I think all the performances in Bourne are actually really good. I think especially on like the CIA side, like I totally believe like the Chris Cooper and Brian Cox like background. I think the cameo from Walton Goggins is nice too.
I mean, that's so weird. It's like Walton Goggins, and then the other guy is like Josh Harrison or whatever, and he's like a pretty big actor.
Can I do a side, since someone mentioned Walton Goggins and I wrote it in my notes?
Yeah.
Does Walton Goggins age?
No, he looks exactly the same. He's
like Paul Rudd, except for Paul Rudd always looks like a cuddly dad, and Walton Goggins always looks like he sells TVs and vacuums.
And I'm really wondering if that's his. That's pretty funny.
I'm
really wondering if that's his real hair color too, because it's like, it looks like it's dyed all the time to be like.
Is that his real face appearance? He always looks like that. It's,
that's a good point.
I really don't like Walton Goggins. Just the way that he looks.
Oh, I love him.
He's a great actor,
but yeah, keep going.
I think another thing to
Not
call
you,
out
Nick.
here about Matt Damon is like, I don't know what it is, but when I see like Jason Bourne in these 3 movies, I only see Jason Bourne and I don't really see Matt Damon.
Oh, that's good.
It's something
yeah.
about like the way he cut his hair.
Yeah.
Like if you think about old Matt Damon, you kind of think of like Good Will Hunting, where he's got kind of like the banks and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. He kind of trimmed down for this role and beefed up a little bit, but he just looks totally different from young Matt Damon to old Matt Damon now, who's a little more beefed up and a little like chubbier in the face. But like
he has like the same haircut as he has in The Departed. And like I kind of have an issue because I think that his voice never changes that much. Like Ford versus Ferrari, his voice changed a bunch. But his voice never changes that much and his face looks just the same. He also just doesn't age
I don't know.
that
He just
much.
like that is Jason Bourne. Like that, you see that person and it's like that's Jason Bourne.
Yeah, I think it's the personality and stuff that he puts into it. Yeah, it's not like a visual like thing for his acting, but I totally agree. Like I see Jason Bourne as well.
One other call out I had, and this is probably the main driver of the 5 and not like a 6 or 7, but there are a few times where I just feel like Maria's character, like she makes decisions that aren't necessarily rational.
No, I don't understand
Like I love the chemistry between those two and I think it's like amazing. I think it's totally believable, but like the fact that she's basically willing to give up her entire life over like a 2-day span.
Yeah, it
so, like,
doesn't register
to
in
go
my
on to
brain.
like honestly like a police chase with this guy is like when you watch it, it doesn't really like impede anything
only
going
thing
on
is
in the
she
movie.
needed
but you think
money.
about it in hindsight, and you're like, wouldn't she have just like taken that 20,000 to Paris and been like, I'm good?
Yeah, I don't think
Like I get it that she kind of like had a romantic relationship with him, but like there's just a few times where it's like I feel like the script could have buttoned up some of those transitions a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree, and that is kind of a character thing. I don't know. I gave it a 5 as well. I'm not blown away by any of the acting, but I think it's really nuanced. I think Matt Damon is great. It's not my favorite of his. There are movies that I like, Good Will Hunting and Ford versus Ferrari and The Departed, where I like absolutely love Matt Damon's performances. Bill Simmons on The Ringer like always talks about how he like if there's a movie with Leo, he's like, oh, this movie could have been better with Matt Damon, and I just think that's the stupidest opinion in the world in any character.
Kimmel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe he's doing that because he's Jimmy Kimmel's guy. I do really like his acting in the scene where he's saying that all the stuff like he knows but he doesn't know his name. I thought that was really good. His accents though, like some of the languages he's speaking, his accents are like horrid. They are bad. And if he's like a special agent that knows all these languages, like not believable. I'll tell you, his French was trash.
His German was decent, but he obviously doesn't look too German.
No. Yeah, he doesn't look like... I don't know how he could have passed off as any of those passport identities.
Quick sidebar.
He only
And I'm
looks
about
like an
to do
American.
a horrible impression, but did anyone read his like British passport as John Michael Caine?
Yeah, every time I see Kanye, I'm like, Michael Caine. I kind of wish that the female, like, I think that Franca Potente is like, or whatever the hell her name is. I think she's good, and she's definitely a good actress in like Run Lola Run. But like, I feel like they could have gotten a better person for that role. She is a cutie though. She's a cutie.
Don't hate on Potente.
That's I don't know, man. Chris Cooper is also an amazing. He's an amazing actor. But I don't think this is anywhere close to any of his great roles. Like, he's been nominated multiple times for Academy Awards because he's fantastic. And I thought this is like one of his most okay roles. He is really good when they confront each other and they're like yelling at each other in that apartment. But like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of these people be way better. Like Brian Cox has been way better in movies and in Succession.
Yeah.
Even though he's good.
He's amazing in Succession. But
what about you, Nick? I put too much in this.
I don't know. I gave it a 5. I don't want to talk too much about it because Gabe's big fat mouth just kept flapping. So,
Sorry.
Julia Stiles sucks though in this.
Well, but she becomes like she's a bigger character in the later
This
movies.
is an A+ performance for her compared to the Jason Bourne one.
Oh,
so.
shit. Okay.
Oh, jeez.
I haven't seen Jason
God,
Bourne
dude.
yet.
I haven't seen that one either. Maybe I'll watch it this weekend. Yikes.
I like her character throughout this trilogy, but yes, it's hard to watch in Jason Bourne. I don't know what
Yikes.
like they were going for, but it's all bad.
Yeah.
I did want to highlight here that Matt Damon learned a type of martial arts called Kali, in which you use other people's energy against them and conserve your own energy.
That sounds pretty Cali.
Yeah, it does sound pretty Cali, dude. But he must have done a good
Rogue
job.
from X-Men?
He must have not. That's not how that works. He must have done a good job because he makes all of those fight scenes look like he's just like breathing.
Yeah,
But
that's
he's just-
good. It's
he's
good
just
physical acting
whooping.
for sure.
Something
Yeah.
about his run too is like I don't know what it is, but he's got like a very short, choppy run, and it almost just like fits his character of like he's always on the move and like everything's fast paced.
Totally.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I don't know if he was
Great
going
observation.
for that or if that's just his like his running style.
Great
but-
observation. I can't believe the guy who played Wombosi is the guy who plays Killer Croc in Suicide Squad. What an idiot.
That's definitely also
I would never do that for a big chunk of money.
all of the Wombosi scenes
Just
detract from the total actor score. It's
Yeah.
like-
Oh, really? You don't like him in it?
I think his character's fine, but if you just kind of like watch it back, it's like
Why is he in
the
it?
first scene is like he almost gets assassinated. Then he goes to the morgue and is like, "That's not my guy." And then the next scene he gets assassinated. It's just like,
Yeah, it's like,
it's like sorry, like
cool character.
yeah, it's like you thought this guy was gonna play a more important role, but actually he's gone now.
It's the least important. All right.
All right, well, let's move on to eye candy. Eye candy is where we talk about all the visual elements of these movies, and so that could be like cinematography, editing, CGI, whatever. Berg, why don't you start with Bourne Identity?
Okay, I'm more comfortable starting with Bourne here because I want to
Okay.
see what you guys say for Memento.
Oh, interesting.
I gave Bourne a 5 here.
Mm.
It's kind of like the same score I gave for acting, where it's just like everything is good but not great.
Yeah.
I love the setting of it. Like it's very like winter and dreary and European. Like it's distinctly European.
Right.
I don't think anything captures like Europe for me more than those sirens that play all throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I just don't think outside of like the action scenes that there's like a ton that would drive this score up for me. I think the car chase scene, the one that I referred to earlier, is really good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the action scenes are really good, but I think the shaky cam actually improves as the trilogy goes on. Like I think if you watch Bourne Supremacy and Bourne Ultimatum, like Paul Greengrass, the director, really like figured out what he was going for.
Right.
Whereas
Well, this one is a different director.
yeah, this
right?
one's
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy.
Yeah.
And like I understood what they were going for with the shaky cam, where it's like it's so fast paced that you feel like his hands are just moving faster than the speed of light.
Oh, I think it's Doug Liman does this.
Oh, Tony
Gilroy's the one who does the
screenplay.
screenplay, and he's an awesome screenwriter.
Yeah, I think he does the entire trilogy.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's like the shaky cam is fine in this movie, but it's better in the next two, so I had to dock it a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I gave it a 4 average. I don't think that the eye candy aspects of it aged that well. It just very much feels like it's early 2000s. I don't like a lot of the camera tricks. I'm really happy that shaky cam is gone. Like one thing that I really like about movies like the Raid movies and the John Wick movies is that they just center on the action. The camera's not moving away or anything. You are seeing all of that, and that goes a lot more into stunt coordination, which is really cool, and it looks visually better. I also hate the zoom effects that they do. Like when he first beats up the guys in the park, it like zooms around into his face, and like with him realizing it, and I get that was like on purpose, but it looked dumb. I think that the lighting of this movie is like aesthetically not that pleasing, but it is kind of like natural.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a nitpicky thing.
It's that like overcast.
Yeah, I think it's just Doug Liman's like lame ass directing style, because he also did like Jumper, which is one of the worst movies ever made. I hate that movie. But he did Edge of Tomorrow though, and I love Edge of Tomorrow and Swingers, which is a classic. Dude, the whole scene where they're activating agents around the country is like, dude, that scene is just aged so poorly. It looks so dumb.
It's a little cringe.
And this is like a $60 million budget, so that's a fucking huge budget. But I'm pretty sure that's because of the filming locations. And they actually showed my favorite building in Paris, which is in La Défense. It's the Grand Arch. So that like square building that is kind of like hollowed out is one of the coolest buildings. But anyways, I gave it 4. What about you, Nick?
I sided with Berg here and gave it a 5.
Let's go.
You're wrong.
I really like. So my favorite thing about the Bourne movies, I literally only gave it a 5 for this reason. Otherwise, it would have been a 4. I love the shaky cam fight scenes. Like the first time when he beats that dude up in the park, and then it does that kind of goofy zoom to his face, and he's like, "Whoa, I just balled really hard."
Yeah.
I love that.
It was intended, so I understand.
I know. I love that part of and like totally they nail it in the next 2 movies. Like there are better Bourne fight scenes than there are in this Bourne movie. So, but like I would give those like 6s and 7s because I love something about that like, and then it's all done and you're like, what just happened? Is really pleasing aesthetically to me. So I gave it a 5.
I hate that. Oh, that's because you guys didn't do martial arts like me.
I'm with you here, Nick. I think the way they use like the quick cuts here almost like enhances the character.
Yeah.
Whereas if you watch like the Taken movies where they also do a ton of shaky cam, you can obviously tell it's like we're just trying to hide Liam Neeson here.
Oh yeah, okay.
Where it's like
that's fair.
Matt Damon, like you totally believe that like he is just on a different level in terms of martial arts, and he's just moving at a faster pace than everyone.
It's intentional.
He learned how to
like it needed to be in it for that, but I'm so happy that we're past shaky cam fighting.
Yeah.
He can absorb people's energy and use it against them.
I definitely prefer like
rogue.
a long cut, but like there's nothing about these specific scenes that like takes me out of the movie.
Yeah. All right, what about Memento, Nick?
Okay, so I put 4/5, and then I wrote, Gabe, convince me. And then you said
I put 4/5.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Yeah. Okay, so do we have to convince each other?
I think you said know why it could be a 5.
You said editing, and I was like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
that's
okay.
It.
I guess the editing in the movie does make it, if I'm going to give the Bourne Identity a 5 because I like shaky cam. But
it's just like it's better editing than the average movie, and I think that's actually something that is important now. Ever since the like Bohemian Rhapsody fiasco when they gave that best editing,
and like ever since I've started doing this and talking to you and talking to your roommate / friend, I
don't know. He's less of a friend after he shit on the White
he doesn't
Album
understand how good Savoy Truffle is. That song's amazing. It's just like the movie doesn't exist if you don't have the editing that you have in the movie as it just isn't the same movie. Like the editing is a character. The way that the plot moves through the way that it's chopped together is just as important to the movie as literally anything else about it.
Because of what you were just saying, I started thinking and I was like, I might move it down to a 4 because I don't think it's like, I can't say it's visually better than Bourne Identity, which is like an action movie and like a really cool, natural looking action movie. But this is made on a $9 million budget. It's like 51 million less.
Yeah, it has like a very unique kind of gritty like look to it too. That is, I don't know, I like it.
It has that natural tone, yeah. But what I just thought in my head would convince me to bring it back up to a 5 has to do with the editing. And what it is, it's the memory cuts. That it quickly shows you what happened to his wife or back in the past. And they do it so quick, and it's such a short thing, that it's basically Christopher Nolan putting in your brain this idea. It's kind of like Inception. He's putting this idea in your brain, and you have to then your brain is like, wait, did he do it or did he not do it?
Yeah.
And that is all visual and editing and like perfect directing in terms of what scenes are going to be where. So I'm at a 5. I don't know. What about you, Berg?
I gave it a 5 as well.
Oh,
I'm actually
shit.
surprised that I gave this the same score as Bourne Identity, but I think the reasoning is just like there's not a lot to knock this movie.
Yeah.
And at the like,
Yeah.
I think I would reserve like 6s and 7s for movies like Birdman and other ones where like the cinematography is just on a different level.
Emmanuel
but like
Lubezki
there's
is
really
crazy.
nothing wrong with any of the cinematography in this movie, and the editing is like so integral to the story that it's like I think 5 is a good like spot on my scale. I think 1 or 2 knocks I had, and this is probably just like because of the era, but there were a few scenes with Natalie or Carrie-Anne Moss's character where like her makeup and her face are like different from scene to scene. So she's like,
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
yeah,
Oh.
like the blood on her
not
cheek and
good.
her lip is like distinctly a different shade of red in the
Right.
diner than it is at her house.
Oh, shit.
And like I don't know why I caught onto it, but it just looked very like production-esque.
Yeah.
Like if you go back and rewatch it, you'll see what I'm talking about, but it doesn't look like real blood.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't notice that.
I'm being very nitpicky
But is it-
there.
No, I
But-
think it's fair.
But see, I noticed that too, and I think it's because she's like it's dried.
Oh,
right?
shit.
Because it's like later in
I didn't
time.
think about any of this.
But I know what you mean, that it doesn't, when it's like scabbed, it doesn't look like
It just
it doesn't look as
It
like
looked like
yeah.
someone had just put it on like an indie set or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But I also think the scene where the black and white fades back into color is like just awesome. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
again, it's just like it's really hard to knock this movie, but at the same time, it's like just because of like the isolated setting and like there's not too many characters, it's hard to really beef it up to a 6 or 7.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, though, to do a $9 million budget with semi-big actors in L.A., production-wise. But I don't know. So that was 5s, actually, from all of us. Let's move on to... Wait, Nick, you gave it a 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Legacy, our last category. Legacy is just about whether this movie will be talked about. Has it been talked about since it came out? And where does it stand in the history of movies? Are there things that people reacted to? We could stick with Memento since we're on it. I think I gave it a 6. I'm like so close to giving it a 7, but it's just this is the one movie that anybody who's like, I like what's like a mindfuck movie I could watch right now. I'm like almost always will say Memento. This is one of those movies that if you're a friend of mine, like a new friend of mine, and you've never seen it, you have to watch it. Every guy in college watches this movie. That's just like a fact. Or in
True.
high school if you're still
Did
getting
it
into
used
movies,
to
like you
be
said.
on Netflix, or maybe it still is.
I think
that's probably why.
it was on Netflix and now it's on like Tubi, but it'll be back on
It's
Netflix.
such a good,
but it was on Netflix
such
for so
a
long.
perfect Netflix watch.
Oh, definitely. It was made. It made only 39 million, but it made 30 million off of this. And like obviously, I think this is what turned Christopher Nolan into this big director that big studios were like, oh, okay, we could give you Batman, whatever you want to do with it. And then now Christopher Nolan's like he's like one of the smartest people with budgets. It's like him, David Fincher, and Denis Villeneuve. Well, especially if you want like a really, really big budget blockbuster movie that like makes you think and you don't have to turn your brain off, like you go with Christopher Nolan. And I think it's because of how clever this movie is and how it stayed in everyone's brain. And it was nominated for 2 Oscars. And so I don't know. I gave it a 6. I'm pretty close to a 7. If you guys have a 7. What about you, Berg?
It's funny, we're all very close on all of our scores here. I was so close to giving both of these. I don't want to tease my Bourne Identity score, but I was very close to giving both of these movies a 7.
Okay.
But I think I gave this one a 6 instead because I prefer Prestige and a few other Christopher Nolan movies a little bit more.
That's kind of where I was
It's
at.
hard for me to give this a 7, but I mean, yeah, if you just look at, like, this movie stands the test of time. It made like almost 4 times its budget, which is incredible for an indie movie back then.
Yeah.
And like as of 2015, there were reports that they're making a sequel because I think the rights have been bought by a new
I
production
remember that,
house.
and I was like, "Fuck,
But
please no."
I think I actually went to look it up today because I wanted to see like what the status was. I haven't seen any new reports since 2015, so my guess is that the negative backlash to that kind of tempered the studio or the production house's
But
motives.
that kind of helps the legacy. It's like people care about this movie so much.
I think that helps the legacy. To like, a studio is literally looking to remake this movie because they're like, this story is so good, and it was only seen by X amount of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave it a 7.
Okay,
I gave Memento
sick.
7, and this is why. Memento is like pop culture iconic.
Yeah.
Like it's in that like upper level of movies where, like, how many times is it referenced in just random little comedies like things like The Simpsons and like Family Guy and like
I wouldn't know because The Simpsons sucks.
No, it doesn't. And Rick and Morty, you're watching the wrong seasons.
That's probably true. I don't watch any seasons.
70% of the seasons are the wrong seasons.
Okay.
But like, how many times is it referenced in those types of things? Like anytime, like tattoo, like the whole tattoo thing is like transcends it just being a movie. Even if you haven't seen Memento, you're like, oh yeah, it's like the tattoo memory guy.
Yeah. Fact number 2: he's a man. I'm definitely gonna get that on like my face.
He's a man, baby. But yeah, that's why I gave it a 7. Like, yeah, it's nominated 2 times. It's obviously a great movie, like very well received by critics and by the audience. There's not much in terms of material that, you know, like sequels, but it doesn't, like you guys are saying, it doesn't need those things.
Yeah.
I think that its impression on like culture is what gives it a 7 to me.
Yeah, you just brought mine up to a 7. That's the second time you've done that today. Good job.
Sorry to be convincing as hell.
Yeah, everyone thinks I'm so stubborn. Well, listen up, dude. Just explain it like Nick just did.
Yeah, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, it's a 7. I mean, this movie's fucking iconic. Like, this is like the movie I will always remember if I forget other movies.
And like,
Maybe-
I'm gonna remember more than Lenny will.
I may be self-isolated, dude, but I'm still, my opinions are infectious. Sorry, go ahead.
how identifiable are the names too? Like Leonard
Oh.
Shelby and Sammy Jenkins.
It's so
Yeah.
easy. Oh, Sammy Jenkins especially, and Sammy
like,
Jenkins
I've already
isn't
talked
even the
about
main
Teddy.
character.
Like, that guy's his name is Teddy. So
That's the
sorry.
tattoo you should get, Gabe. You should get Remember Sammy Jenkins on your hand.
Yeah. Or who the fuck is Dodd?
God.
Natalie, right? Who the fuck is Dodd?
I'm running. I'm chasing this guy.
I'm chasing this guy.
Wait.
Oh wait, no, he's chasing
Oh, I
me.
love
That
that.
is a great moment. Good call. Okay, let's finish it off with Bourne Legacy.
Bourne Identity.
Bourne Identity Legacy. So Bourne Legacy. I give it a 6. I think it is a really well-loved movie, really well-loved franchise, all very successful. It's actually one of those rare trilogies that like people genuinely loved all the way through. I think some people even think like Bourne Ultimatum is the best one, and that's kind of rare besides Lord of the Rings.
Truth.
I don't know. It inspired, I mean, even beyond its trilogy, like it inspired Bourne Legacy. And now there's a show called Treadstone. I don't watch it, but like it's all based on this. So it's like it's one of those, you know, based off of a book, but it's like one of those IPs that are really valuable. And I think that helps the legacy. I don't know. It got like a 68 from Metacritic, which is not very good.
Interesting.
But it made over 214 million worldwide. I'm pretty sure it's like super popular in China. They love Matt Damon. That's why he made The Great Wall.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Actually really funny.
Yeah.
I gave it a 6 as well. it's got a million spin-offs. It gets the nod to a 6 from like a 5 for not spin-offs, sequels, and I guess spin-offs later down the line. But you know, it's not like this like huge critically acclaimed movie, but obviously it's got its legacy. It's Bourne legacy, Ultimatum.
I think I was doing it like I didn't
Supremacy.
even think about like I think I'm just doing it personally. I don't think it's like not my favorite action movie. It's not my favorite action series. It's not my favorite spy series.
But Jesus Christ,
but
it's
it's great.
Jason Bourne.
But Jesus Christ, it is Jason Bourne. What about you, Berg?
Close it out, Berg.
7.
It took all of my willpower not to give this a 7.
Oh, no way.
What? Oh, twist.
I gave it a 6, probably just because of the latest one. And I know that like Jason Bourne shouldn't play into my Bourne Identity thoughts, but like the way they ended his story, just it was a very sloppy way. Like,
So make it like age poorly, like the
yeah,
whole
it
thing.
makes it
Yeah.
so that like you almost kind of have to think about that movie when you're watching the first one, which sucks
Oh,
because I
man.
think the first
Yeah.
3 movies, that original trilogy might be the best action trilogy of all time.
Right.
I don't know what other movies like feel like one cohesive story like that trilogy does.
Batman.
And like that character has like just made its way into pop culture. Like you guys just made fun of it, but like that quote, like, my God, that's Jason Bourne.
What is that? Which one is that from?
That's from the second and no, so it's from the third one. Noah
Okay.
Vosen says it.
Yeah.
When he's helping out the reporter Simon in
Right.
the train station
That's
or I think it's a train station, the Waterloo, whatever the Waterloo is. And then it's funny because they used it as a trailer scene for Jason Bourne.
Oh, did they?
But
Oh,
then
that's
didn't
fine.
use it in the movie. So it's like they knew that like fans love that quote, but then they just didn't put it in the movie.
Oh, interesting. I mostly know it because of this really funny Vine where it's like, Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne. And it's like this guy, this like kind of like overweight kid in his backyard using a samurai sword and like cutting bottles and stuff.
Yeah. Clay,
It's really funny. Look it up.
Clay does a really good impression of it.
Oh, Clay loves quoting that.
But like, I think too, they were there. I think initially they had plans to do a second trilogy
No.
that would have like brought Matt Damon into the Jeremy Renner world.
That's right. And that
But
kind of died
I
off.
think Matt Damon basically squashed it and said like, if there's going to be a movie that has Bourne in the title,
it's got to be
it's only
me.
going to be me, which sucks because I think there was potential for like more creative stories there. And they ended up just going with Jason Bourne, which was
But
like
that also happened
a
in,
really
like-
sloppy rehash of the first 3.
Wait, didn't that happen that also happened in Mission Impossible with Jeremy Renner?
Yeah,
Dude.
He
so-
like comes in,
I think he's
does
like
a really
poisoned.
good job, and they're like, "Dude, get out of here, man."
Wow, maybe that's it. I don't know, dude.
Hey, Jeremy, fuck off.
Yeah, dude, seriously. Hey, go make some songs that Chris D'Elia will use in his podcast. Yeah, okay, so that's 6s from all of us. Why don't we add it up right now? Since we closed it out, I could give you mine really quick. And it was going to be lower, and I was going to be concerned about it, but I gave Memento a 29 out of 35. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, but I
Okay,
think when you break it
interesting.
down, you know, I don't know. And then Bourne Identity, I gave a 26, you know, which is still pretty high for me. You know.
Berg. Mine is my Bourne is 28 and my Memento is 30.
30 out of 35. Woo,
Yeah.
woo.
My Memento is 29, and my Bourne is 27, which
Well,
is
see,
like,
we had different scores.
yeah, it's a
Wow,
weird.
your Bourne was way lower than I expected.
I know. I like, for me, Bourne is like one of my favorite movies. I don't have like a formalized list, but it's definitely like top 15.
Well-
But I would consider all of it. Like, I consider the first 3 movies like one movie essentially.
Okay.
So it's hard to like pull one out, but yeah, I think I enjoy Bourne Identity more than Memento,
Whoa.
but I can like respect the like craftsmanship that's going on in Memento.
Hey, well, I appreciate your impartiality, dude. You would be a really good Supreme Court justice. Let's go into our accolade section.
So that's 81 to 88. Memento's the
Wow.
winner.
88
Yeah.
out of
I think that makes
105. That's pretty great. But yeah, that's close. I mean, these movies are both great, and I love doing, two good movies.
Both are so easy to rewatch, too.
It's so easy to rewatch, and both just like iconic movies that everyone knows. And so
I might watch Bourne Identity again because I want to watch the trilogy. Julie hasn't seen this one.
Any of the first 3 Bourne movies are on that like list that exists where if it's on TV, you can't turn it off.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
I'll turn on Bourne Supremacy or Bourne Ultimatum. I'm just like, yep, I'm going to sit here and watch this entire thing.
Yeah. All right. What do you guys have like an MVP of these 2 movies? Yo, people who can remember things. MVP.
Memories. I can't remember who mine was. Who's my MVP? I don't know. Walton Goggins. Doesn't age. Found the He found the Holy Grail.
What about you, Berg? You got MVP?
This is a lazy answer, but I'm gonna go with the like directors here.
Yeah.
For the fact that they didn't handhold the audience, which I love.
I love that.
Like there definitely exists 2 versions of both of these movies where like they use a lot of exposition. And a bunch of other characters to like fill in the blanks. But like I appreciate that both of these directors were just like, this is my story, and like we're both gonna solve it at the same time as the protagonist. So like I have to give it to the guys behind the camera here.
For sure. What about LVP?
Also Walton Goggins. He may have found the Holy Grail. He may not ever age, but he still looks like he sells used Subarus. So
that room that they were all in just didn't really feel like Langley, Virginia. CIA.
Nah.
It felt like just kind of like a
LVP is the production designer. That's right. Whoever you were.
No, he's all right.
Hey, I got a question. Did Lenny do it? Did Lenny kill his wife?
I believe so.
I do too.
I think he probably did.
Okay, all right, that's settled.
It's basically whether or not you believe Lenny's character more than Teddy's character.
Yeah.
And I think upon rewatch,
I believed
Lenny. I believed Teddy's character.
Yeah, I don't know what Teddy's character would have to gain by telling him that.
If you think about what he basically says in the end, it's like he is a horrible person.
They're both horrible.
He's just having this dude kill
people.
like low lives for him.
Yeah, it's messed up. I don't know if he's terrible though.
And then he's taking pictures. That's so sad that he takes a picture of him being excited, and he's like, "Look how excited you are here."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, dude, you just killed some random.
I don't know, dude. That's what
lowlife.
Instagram is.
I guess.
It's all pictures of us after we killed random lowlifes. All right, question for each of you. And I know Berg's answer, but you could like try here to like think about these. All right, Mission Impossible, Bourne Identity or the Bourne movies, James Bond, or John Wick. I threw in John Wick because a lot of people really like John Wick. But I do like John Wick, and I think that they've gotten cooler and cooler.
Bond, James Bond.
Yeah. But who's the best American hero? Ethan Hunt or Jason Bourne?
Ethan Hunt.
Or John
Well, I don't think Jason Bourne's actually a hero.
Really a hero.
Yeah, he's a protagonist.
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt is like the hero that America always needs. I would love to name my kid Ethan after him.
Ethan Hunt is the America that America always needs.
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt
America
is
Ethan Hunt again. What about you? So you're Jason Bourne, though.
I'm for sure Jason Bourne, but I think there are movies from all of those series that like compete on the same level, like Skyfall, for example.
Oh yeah,
Casino Royale probably under Skyfall. The first John Wick.
Yes, there's a smart man in here.
The Mission Impossibles don't really strike a chord with me like the other ones because I just never feel like the stakes are there. Like Ethan Hunt's never gonna die.
Dude, but he does the insane. Like the Dubai tower, the tower climbing scene in Dubai in Ghost Recon or Ghost Protocol is like I was pooping my pants in the theater.
Yeah,
no
dude,
doubt.
I can
sweaty palms.
Yeah,
I can definitely appreciate that he does all of his stunts, and I feel like that makes the movie so much better. Which is why John Wick is also getting like so much love nowadays because the fighting and all the like, stunt choreography
it's made by
is,
a stunt coordinator.
Yeah, it's just so much better than what.
There's actually a movie coming out next month by the stunt coordinator for the Avengers movies, the late Avengers movies, starring Chris Hemsworth. It's called Extraction. They haven't done a trailer for it, but it'll be out on Netflix. So that'll be huge. Do you guys have any recommendations, like based on these movies or things that you think people should watch?
The Jack Ryan show on Amazon, I guess.
Yeah. John Krasinski is more yummy.
Oh,
yummy,
but
though, huh?
John Krasinski can buy me dinner. I got the tip, but he can buy me dinner any day, dude.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've
don't
got
tip
a
much
weird
anyways.
one that's kind of similar to Memento, and this was recommended to me by my roommate Nick. But I also appreciate this movie a lot. Enemy by Denis Villeneuve.
Great movie.
Also
Yeah.
another movie where you don't really know what's going on and you're not sure if the protagonist is telling you the truth.
Yeah, it says in the beginning there's like the pre-script that says chaos is order yet defined or something, or yet deciphered. And really at the end of the movie, like Nick, Jimmy and I watched it and we spent 45 minutes afterwards just talking about what happened, and we think that we pieced it together. But the second time I saw it, I was like, I think I know what happens. But it's tough.
I've only
That's a
seen it
great
the
one.
one time. I got to rewatch that thing.
It's really good
Yeah,
on
that's
rewatch.
like when Denis Villeneuve was really starting to come on.
Yeah.
And then me and Gabe have seen this one, a really small indie film called Primer.
Oh, yeah, Primer. But
This one
honestly, if your movie, the movie you were on, Minor Premise, if that ever comes out, that one is like perfect to pair with this.
Yeah, so Primer is a really small indie film that's not about memory loss, but it's about time travel.
It's insane.
And you leave like the last scene just having so many questions. And
Yeah.
there's like, it's one of those like cult movies where there's people that have like spent hours drawing up diagrams and you're still
I've heard of this.
You're
Yeah.
still not sure if they know what they're talking about.
It's insane. It's like that and Dark are like the smartest time travel movies.
But yeah,
ever.
what
Or
Gabe was talking about,
content.
I got to work on like a small indie film in New York that used Primer as like a really strong comp. So
Yeah, Alec and I, my roommate and I watched it, and it's fantastic, and it really makes you think a lot.
so one of these days we're gonna get that as a facing off.
Yeah, I have one recommendation. I don't think a lot of people are going to watch this, but there was this huge movie in China last year. It like broke the box office records before it even aired, called Long Day's Journey into Night. And I'm able to watch it right now because I have the Criterion channel because I'm a cinephile nerd, and I just got that this week while we're isolated. But I got to tell both of you guys about this. The first half of the movie, Nick, are you paying attention?
I am.
The first half of the movie is like fragmented and it's like memories and you don't really know what's happening. The second half of the movie, an hour of the movie, is all one continuous shot. No editing or anything. It's literally one continuous shot in 3D. It's like they use a 3D camera, which is heavy as shit apparently, and it goes up into the air, it goes back down, like it floats around and stuff. It is the most insane shot movie I've ever seen. And Bong Joon-ho was like, everyone needs to look out for this director in the future. So if you ever get a chance, so by the way, you can't, obviously you can't watch the 3D stuff, and I wish I saw it in theaters so I could have, but it's brilliant. It's like, it blew my mind. But you will legitimately not understand a single thing that happens, and you just have to forgo like any belief in plot.
What's that called? Long Day's Journey.
Long Day's Journey into Night. It has nothing to do with the play, but great Chinese movie. Really good if you're looking for something foreign.
Sweet.
All right. Next week we haven't really figured out yet, but we're gonna probably do multiple episodes since we're isolated right now. And we want to just give you guys content, and it'll be something that is streaming. So I actually put out a poll today that you could find. I will re-release it tomorrow when this episode airs on Friday. Just let us know some movies that you like that are streaming that you think would be good for a podcast episode. You could find us on instagram.com/facingoffpod, and that's actually where you'll find that poll. We are also on Twitter, twitter.com/facingoffpod. Go and follow us there. We have podcasts following us. We want all of you to. I know everyone's on Twitter right now with all the news. And then you can send us an email at facingoffpodcast@gmail.com. I know everyone's very bored right now. Send us a long email telling us all about it. Do you have a send-off, Nick?
I want Jason Bourne in a body bag by sundown.